Hey, this is Keith with Stewards the Master. Today, I want to discuss with you the importance of family meetings. Let's discuss a very common situation, a situation that could be avoided. Grandma and grandpa in their mid to late 80s are living at home alone. Grandma dies, and grandpa develops dementia and is in the hospital. Who makes decisions for grandpa? Is it the oldest child? Is it the youngest child? Is it the middle child? Is it the grandchild who's in medical school? And the answer is maybe. But the problem is that no one knows where grandpa's trust documents are. They don't know where the medical directive is. This could be avoided. And so, what I want to talk to you about today is why transparency, why communication that is open and honest and available to everyone in the family is so much better. Very often, I talk with clients who are resistant to sharing their personal information with their children and grandchildren. They wait as long as they possibly can to communicate anything of any real value to their children about what they have and what their desires are. They figure that, well, if they have a trust, they'll just figure out in the trust and they'll do what they're going to do. But the problem is much bigger than that. Why do you think that so many people are resistant to sharing this personal but important information? As a certified kingdom advisor who's trained to bring biblical wisdom to the advice of my clients, one of my core beliefs is that we are required as ministers of the Lord and stewards of wealth is that we're to prepare the next steward of the wealth that God has entrusted to us. And part of preparing the next steward is open communication and expectations and to communication as to what you would desire that the next steward would do with this wealth that you're entrusting to them with. A family meeting with everyone present, children, grandchildren, and anyone else who's necessary is vitally important. Open communication can set the tone to communicate priorities for the family as to what is important to you and to your spouse as to how your affairs are to be handled for the rest of their lives in the event that you're no longer able to make those decisions. It also creates the expectation of what your family is going to be receiving in the event of your death and how you would like them to handle this wealth. And it also requires, obviously, that if you're going to do this, that you need to be open and honest with yourself as to how able and willing the people whom you're going to leave this wealth will handle your desires. Are they going to squander it in a way that you wouldn't approve of? Or are they going to handle this wealth in a way that's mature and honoring to the Lord? And if you want to leave wealth to someone who isn't going to be prepared to handle it, then you need to be open and honest and set up opportunities for them to succeed. And you can do that with an attorney and an advisor. But let's talk about why a family meeting is so important. In short, I would just say this, that it creates an easier transition and less hassle in times of crisis. When the little story I told here in the beginning, Grandpa had developed dementia and he was in the hospital. Nobody knew where his trust was. So because they didn't know where the trust was, they didn't know where the medical directive was, and nobody knew who could make decisions for grandpa. It was really unfortunate because grandma and grandpa had gone to all that work to create the trust, to name the person who was going to be responsible for making those medical decisions, and here the family's fighting. Who gets to make the decision for grandpa? Certainly, grandpa, if he were in his right mind, wouldn't have been happy about that, to see his family fighting. So, open communication in a family meeting can avoid that. Here's the document. Here's who's making the decision. Grandpa decided it. It's not, he gave me the decision making power. And so no one else should be upset or trying uh, to mosey on in and exert their power. But let's talk about some of the things that should be discussed in a family meeting. Think of your family as a small business. Any good small business has a plan for cash outflows, cash inflows, savings for future expenses, and we should think of our family in the same way. So when we're talking about family meetings, one of the things that we want to talk about is where our loved ones can find an inventory of our assets and our documents. Where do grandma and grandpa keep the trust? It doesn't mean that we need to go and look at it right now, but it should be well known where it is, so that in the event you need it for that medical directive or when grandma and grandpa pass away, that it's easily found and there's not a whole lot of fighting. And when you have that, I think it's obviously a good idea, although a lot of people are resistant to this, that we should create the expectation of what our family is going to receive. It's either going to be divided fairly or there's going to be this or this way. And grandma and grandpa's decisions are well known so that there's no surprises. Because in situations like this, surprises in times of crisis and tragedy and difficulties and grief never end up well. So having an inventory of where the trust is, where the medical directive is, the power of attorney, inventory of assets. It's also a good idea to have a list of important people to know who to contact. Grandma and grandpa's attorney, their financial advisor, their tax professional, and anyone else they would need to know who they are to get information that they need in the event of grandma and grandpa passing away or their incapacity. So having a list of phone numbers, emails, and even passwords to some of the online accounts. Power of attorney may need that information. And it could be very difficult and trying in a difficult time to get that information when you need it. It's important that people know where to find insurance policy statements are. Where are grandma and grandpa's life insurance policies? It does you no good if you don't know it exists, or you don't know which insurance company or who to contact to get the benefit. This would be especially true for long-term care. If you don't know whether or not grandma and grandpa have a long-term care policy, it's probably a good idea that you know where to find that information so that you can see whether or not it exists and get the benefit that your grandma and grandpa planned for. So these are just a couple ideas for what we need to discuss in a family meeting. In short, I believe that transparency and open communication is key and does well for our family and is honoring to the Lord. I want to hear your comments here and hear what you think. And if I can help you in any way with that, please let me know. This is Keith, over and out.